Hey, you've tuned into Math with Mr. C. This time we're on the second lesson of Chapter 18. Now we're doing the surface area. For this one, you will need a calculator. Alright, now we're checking our homework, and I'm going to take this opportunity to give you time to make sure that you have lines over the edges. That's a symbol for an edge. And then if a face is a rectangle, we put a little box before it. And if a shape is a triangle, we put a little triangle before it. So it's pretty simple with the shapes. I'm going to give you time to do that right now. Next, check the rest of your homework problems. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Alright, and as we go into our first example, I'm going to ask you to keep your ears open for 3 clue words during this lesson. So, surface area. How can you find the surface area of a polyhedron? Remember, a polyhedron is just a multiple-sided figure. So this is a multiple-sided prism. And what kind of prism is this called? What's the base? A rectangle. Okay, so this is a rectangular prism. So Rufus wants to cover a shoebox, which is right here, with decorative paper to make a storage box for his photos. How much paper will he need to cover the box? Find the surface area of the shoebox. So just to look at my units, I know that I read this 10 inches, and I know that my answer is going to be in inches squared because it is surface area. I know that whenever I see area, I know it's going to be squared. So what's interesting and also kind of fun about this is there's multiple ways to find the surface area of any figure that we do today. So one of the ways that you could do it is if you prefer a picture, you could draw a net for every problem that we do today. So here we have a net. So this big blue one I see is the top, that's the biggest, and we have the sides, and then we have the front, the green, and the back is the green. So if we choose to draw a net, we kind of need to find our numbers. So we said this was the left and the right side. And so I know that's like right here. I know that this side is also the same as this left side that I can't see. So I know that it's going to be base times height. Base. I don't see a number. That is, these are the same. So it's 10 times 6. And I know that both of those sides are the same, so each of those are 60 inches squared. And what numbers do I multiply the top and the bottom? 8 by 10. So you'll notice that if you use a net for this lesson, you're drawing a picture, but you're also putting the work inside each shape. Now the top, and what are these green? The front and the back. So that is this. I don't know how long that is. I don't know how long this is, but that's the same as 8. So this is 8 times 6 for both of those. Alright, so you'll notice that I have answers written on each box. And so to find the total surface area, all that you would do is add those together. So I took all of those numbers, and I'm just adding them together. So if I choose that strategy, then my surface area, when I add them together, would be 376 inches squared. So Cornelius needs 376 square inches of paper to cover the box. And Mr. C, it seemed like there was more ways to do this. How long will that take, or what are the other ways? With the first clue word of tall. So another way of finding out what is the surface area of this, other than a net, would be to use this formula. Now, how do they get this formula? Well, let's just assign some of these numbers, length and width and height. So this is the height, this is the length, and this is the width. So what sides are they talking about here with 2LW, and why'd they multiply both of these by 2? Well, if you notice by the net, there's 2 of every type, so there's 80 inches squared and 80 inches squared. That's because with a rectangular prism, the top and the bottom are the same, and the front and the back are the same, and the left and the right are the same. So there's 2 of every kind of measurement. Length and width, I see that's length, width, so that's the top and the bottom. So that's just top and bottom. Width times height, what's that? Width times height, so that's the front and the back. And length times height, length times height. That's left and right. Now, because we are going to need to remember this, kind of like Mr. C, I don't understand, like, why, how am I supposed to remember that? Well, it doesn't really have to go in that order. It's just you're combining all the letters in all the possible ways. So L can go with W, so 2LW, plus L could go with H, plus 2LH, plus, which one's left? Oh, WH, plus 2WH. And that's a way of doing it too. You don't actually have to memorize it, just know you're using length times width times height, and you're using every possible combination of those two letters. Just showing you the rest if I actually calculated it out. Now there is another way that is actually my favorite, with a second clue word of white. Now this is the way that I do, in the way that I solve personally every surface area problem that we would do today. And you could do it the same way if you prefer. And that will be to write out the faces. So I look at the figure, and for this specific one, it has a top, a bottom, a front, a back, a left, and a right. That's what I do first, and then I write out the numbers. So the top and the bottom are 10 times 8. The front and the back are 8 times 6. And the left and the right are 10 times 6. Now, this just helps me keep track of every face so that I don't get the wrong answer, that I don't forget a side. After I get those numbers, I add them together and I'll get my answer. For the vocab notes today, we are just reminding you of certain equations that we're going to use, formulas. So please write these in your notes, and on these blank lines as we go through the lesson, you'll come back to your vocab notes and fill these in with the knowledge that you gain. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. So for example 1, we are working with finding the surface area of a triangular prism. The bases are triangles, so I know it's a triangular prism. And because there's so many different numbers here, we're not actually using an equation. That'd be very difficult. So we're going to make a net, and we're going to write out the sides and the faces, which again is my favorite. Later on you can pick which one you'd like to do, but we're going to do both for example 1. So first, take the time to write this figure and label each side. Next, let's start with this net. Please draw the net in your notes in example 1, number 1. And here I've labeled the net. In my opinion, the hardest part was, like, what numbers go here? So this was, the back side was right here. The bottom is right here, base of 12. And this diagonal has a width of 15, and all of them are 18 long. So now in my net, I'm going to write my equations with my answers. So this one would be 9 times 18. This one would be 12 times 18, 15 times 18. And the triangles are a little different. This is 12 times 9, base times height, divided by 2. Again over here, 12 times 9, divided by 2. And then go ahead and find your answers, showing you in 3, 2, 1. And if you're wondering, yes, I did use a calculator for these, and you should too. So there I have them labeled. So to find the answer, all I do is add them together. So going back to my second way we're going to do it, we're going to write out the sides and the faces. So the front, 9 times 12 divided by 2. The same with the back, it's still 9 is the height times 12 is the base divided by 2. Alright, and with the last clue word of lamp. So now I'm doing the bottom. What's the bottom? 12 times 18. Next will be the left side right here, which is 9 times 18. And last would be the top diagonal, which it's weird because usually we don't use diagonals, but if you're just imagining this as a rectangle that's just kind of leaning over, the base is 18 and the height of how tall that rectangle is 15. So it's 18 times 15. So both ways, if you can see the numbers here, you'll get the same numbers. Here's a picture. This is not a picture. And then we just add them together. So adding all those numbers together, I get an answer of 756 centimeters squared. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. For example 1, number 2, take your time to write this square pyramid. It is a square as the base, and then make the net. Alright, now that you have both of those things done, how would I find the area of this face, this side? Well, what's the base? Oh, I see that all of them are 3. So base is 3 times 5. That's 15. But I remember that this is a triangle, so I'm going to divide by 2. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5 inches squared. And what I notice is that every single face is the same. All of them are 5 tall, and all of them have a base of 3, which means that I'm just going to basically write that 4 times. So all that's left is what is the middle? Let's every side's 3, so it's 3 times 3, so it's 9 inches squared. So if I add those all together, then I'll get my answer. I also, again, last one, I saw them and I see there's a base and there's 4 equal faces. So the base is 3 times 3, so that's 9. And then there's each face is 5 times 3 divided by 2, but since there's 4, I could multiply that by 4. So I get 7.5 times 4, which will give me 30. So all I got to do is add 9 to 30. I get 39 inches squared. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, and for this I actually need 3 examples for example 1, just because there's different kinds of shapes. And if you're using a note sheet, go ahead and put this on number 1 of independent practice, because we will only have 2 independent practices. Now, if I was going to find the surface area of a cylinder, which is right here, which I want to give you time to write this and label it, so go ahead and do that. All right, now that you have this drawn, to find it, I see that both bases are the same. So we're going to find the area of one base and multiply by 2, because there's 2 of them. And then next, there's the rectangular side, which it looks curved, but when we flatten it out, it's a rectangle. So all I got to do is find the area of this circle and this circle. So this is the area of one circle multiplied by 2, add it to this rectangle. So I know again, to find the area of this rectangular side, it's the length of this side, which is the base, times the height. Well, the height's pretty easy. The height's right here, 6.5, but the length is a little harder. I actually need my circumference equation. So this is going to be circumference of the base right here, times the height of the cylinder, because the length all the way around one circle is how long this rectangle is, and good thing that we have that equation written in our notes. So this is what you're going to go back to your vocab notes and write down as the surface area equation for a cylinder. So go back, do that right now. All right, now that you have that written, 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r times height. I know that whenever I see pi, I'm going to use 3.14. Because of course we're going to use our calculators. It'd be a little crazy to not do that. So right alongside this, in example 1, number 3, go ahead and fill these numbers in. So we have 2 times 3.14, which is pi, and radius is right here, 2.5, and it's squared, so we multiply it twice. Plus 2 times pi, 3.14, times the radius, 2.5, times 6.5, which is the height. Now this seems really confusing, but all we're doing is we're just taking these letters and we're putting in the correct numbers, and if we multiply them on our calculator, then we'll get the right answer. So after multiplying this, I get 39.25, and after multiplying these numbers on my calculator, I get 102.05, and I get my answer after adding them together of 141.3. And what's my units? Okay, centimeters squared. So this work right here should be in example 1, number 3. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so for example 2, let's look at this cube, and I know in our vocab notes we still need to fill in the equation. What I know about a cube is that all faces are the same. Every single, the base, the height, the width, they're all 2. So what could we do? Well, we could do the base times the height, which is one side. We could find one side, and how many sides are in a cube? 6 of them. So we're just going to find one face and multiply by 6, and that's the cube surface area equation. Please use that equation to find the surface area of this cube. Showing you the answer in 3, 2, 1. So that was 2 times 2 times 6, which is 4 times 6, which is 24 inches squared. Alright, we're going to use our calculator again for example 2, number 2. Draw this cylinder, label it, and practice taking numbers from here to fill in our equation and get our answer. Take note, this is the diameter. They don't give you the radius, they give you the diameter. So you have to find the radius from 10. Showing you the answer in 3, 2, 1. And there's how I did that problem. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. For number 1 of 2 for independent or partners practice, find the surface area of this triangular prism without seeing the answer. Answer is coming in 3, 2, 1. So first I started by labeling them. It doesn't matter if you labeled them the same as me, but my front would be here, my back would be here, my left would be the back here, my top diagonal, and my bottom. And there's how I wrote out all of the sides. Then I'd add them all together. When I add all of these numbers together, I got 84 yards squared. For this, please draw this rectangular prism and treat this as the height, this is the width, and this is the length, and use the formula this time to find the surface area. Showing you how I did it in 3, 2, 1. And that's how I did that problem. For this lesson, you will not do these bottom choices. You must do Khan Academy until you get done, and then you may do the homework. Only work on Khan Academy video and practice. Thank you.